Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday Tea Time History Chat Live. Slightly earlier time today of 11 o'clock instead of 1 o'clock. Although, seeing as you watch me from all over the world, then maybe doesn't really matter to you. And welcome if you're joining me on Instagram. I'm streaming here live and, of course, on YouTube as well. Welcome as well if you're watching on the catch up. And, of course, if you're listening on the podcast, which I know a lot of you do. Hi, today we are going to be talking about some of the anniversaries that have happened this week in history, two of which are today. So we'll talk about how fog caused complete and utter chaos at the Battle of Barnet and led to the death of Warwick the Kingmaker. We're going to talk about the Earl of Bothwell dying his very sad, mad death in the dungeon of a Danish castle. And also, I will tell you about my most recent trip down to London, because I know a lot of you are interested in what it's like in London to travel there at the moment. So can everyone hear me okay before I move on? Maybe send me some hearts if you're watching on Instagram and smash the like button if you are watching on YouTube. That would be great. Okay, let me have a sip of my tea before I start. Monkey Boy, I don't know what that means in the chat. You've put your finger there, which makes me think you can't hear me, which is now putting me off. Okay. I've got hearts, so I'm presuming I can be heard, so I will carry on. So thank you, everyone, for joining. I am slightly early today. This is just for this week. However, what I will say is I'm not around for the next 2 weeks, but I'll tell you more about that later. Before I get on to anything, I want to give a shout out to Catherine. She is the newest patron over on my Patreon site, patreon.com/British History. And a quick mention, because she will be part of the competition, which is drawn tomorrow and includes anyone who is a paid up patron today, to win a year's digital subscription to the brand new Tudor Places magazine. If you want to know more about Tudor Places magazine, go to tudorplaces.co.uk. You can also find them on Instagram, Tudor Places. It looks to be a fantastic magazine. It's run by Deb Royal, who's now one of my great friends, and we do the Visiting Tudor Britain room together. Sarah Morris, the Tudor Travel Guide, is a contributor, regular contributor, as well as Julian Humphreys, who any of you have joined us for History After Dark room will have met on a couple of occasions as well. So, hi Anandita, how are you doing? Yes, I am doing it early today. How are you doing over there in India? Is it still 40 degrees or something like it was last week? Yes, because any of you who joined me last week will know that my daughter's been on a ski trip and they are due back bang on when I normally do my Thursday Tea Time Live. And so today doing a bit early. So I know many of you will be catching this on the catch up. So apologies for not being able to coincide with my normal live time today, but hopefully you enjoy the chat after the live has been restreamed, whatever the word would be, again. So last week, some of you may have seen, if you were looking at the Visiting Tudor Britain room, that I was down in London. I went down Thursday evening. So we did this Thursday Tea Time Live last week, and then went on to do actually a History After Dark private Zoom room with a wonderful lady called Emma. And it was her 30th birthday, and her husband had bought a private Zoom session for her with me and Kat and Catherine, and we had a fabulous discussion, loads of fun, talking about usurpation actually in the Plantagenets and the Tudors. Oh, hi Emma, she's here. How are you doing? She gave us some lovely news as well while we were on. We are now, can I say, Emma? I'm not going to say unless you tell me I can say. But that was fabulous. So after we finished the Emma, I was straight in the car and down to London. So I will tell you a bit more about what it's like to be travelling around London at the moment. So so myself, Kat, and Catherine are going to be aunties. So Emma has found out she's pregnant, so she was not going to be able to go out to the pub on her birthday, and so we got to celebrate it with her instead, which was great. I hope you had a fabulous day, by the way, Emma, when we parted company, and thank you very much for sending us the photo of the scan. Scandalous that you didn't get a printout and you had to do it on your phone, but anyway, hopefully for your other one you'll get some actual printed out photographs. So yes, I went down to London. There's a few reasons for me going down there. Hi everyone who's joining. Yes, I'm at different time today. I've got something on at 1 o'clock today, so I've gone a little bit early. So thank you for joining me, especially when you're over in America, because I think it must be super, super early for you, unless you just haven't gone to bed. Maybe. But maybe we'll get some more people from Australia. Oh, Janice is saying congratulations to Emma. It's very, very exciting. So I went down to London for a few reasons. It is less than 5 weeks until the tour that I'm running, the Anne Boleyn tour, starts. Oh, Leah is coming, and Leah, yeah, so it's a good time down in London. London? You're not in London yet. Good time down in Australia. Good morning, Jenna. 6 a.m. on Rhode Island. Emma, had so much fun. Thank you, Auntie Philippa. Love it. So the Anne Boleyn tour goes in less than 5 weeks. So I was down in London doing some prep for that. I always go down and double check arrangements for the pickup. Place where we pick up, so a meeting point. Because London changes all the time, and of course it's well, effectively, so for 2 years we've not been able to tour, so actually it's 3 years since we last toured. So anyway, things change. So I was down there doing that and some research for the live masterclass of visiting Tudor London that myself and Sarah Morris are taking at the end of May. And if you're interested, or you think you might be interested in that, then make sure you're on my newsletter list, because I'll be sending out some more details and a link to register your interest this weekend. Also, if you're on Sarah's email list, then she will be sending out details as well. And very soon we'll be putting tickets on sale for that. But yeah, so I was down there to Janice, so you're making sure we're awake. Leah, right? Leah says, stop working out, you're making me feel bad. Wow. I used to work out all the time. I'm a bit of I do CrossFit, blah blah blah. Anyone who doesn't do CrossFit is like rolling their eyes. But got me super fit, loved it, sorted out a bad back. I actually am a Richard III example. I have scoliosis and it really, really helps my back. Anyway, I got very fit, and then lockdown hit, and even though I was exercising loads, I think I was overeating and consoling myself with not a lot of wine, but I probably had a wine every night. Anyway, the pounds piled on, so I'm now getting back to being my super fit self, I hope. Ready for the tours. So yeah, Operation Tour Fit. You can follow me on Instagram on my stories to watch that. Hi, Rightif. Yes, I have my tea back in my Valhalla awaits mug, like last week, getting into my Anglo-Saxon history. Actually, before I move on, let me tell you, I was speaking 2 days ago to Elizabeth Norton, who some of you may know. You may have seen her on the TV. She's well known for her Tudor history. She's written quite a few books. She's also written she also has a strong interest and has written a book about one of the Anglo-Saxon England, specifically the Queen. The book's called Elfrida, but it's Athelfrith. Leah, absolutely not motivating me to not give up. Oh, good. Love working out, but some health problems. Yeah, well, yeah. It's I will keep going. Keep motivating people to get fit. There's going to be a lot of walking. Whatever you manage to do, once you're on tour, you'll be like, I do feed you a lot as well, though. So. I have this thing. I can't stand the idea of anyone going like hungry, or I think it's. Oh, sorry, I'm touching my microphone. I think it's me. I panic about Is panic the right word? Probably not, but about going hungry. How ridiculous is that? Leah, we're gonna have a bourbon when you're here. We're gonna share one. Not share a glass, I'll buy you one. A drink. We'll share a drink together. So where was I? I can't remember. So down in London, so I was looking at two places. So the main reason for me to go down there was to check out the pickup point, the meeting point for the tours this year. But also because Sarah and I are doing this live Tudor London masterclass. So if you want to visit London and you're interested in Tudor history, it's absolutely perfect for you. I went, as part of that, to do some research at Fulham Palace, which is the seat or the London house of the bishops of London, or it was anyway until quite recently, but it was for 1300 years, so right back into Anglo-Saxon times. That's what I was talking about, talking to Elizabeth Norton. So you might know Elizabeth from Tudor history, but she's big into her Anglo-Saxon history as well. And I'm going to be interviewing her in a couple of months. Patrons will get their chance to ask their own questions to Elizabeth as usual. And I'm really looking forward to doing that. The Mad Journalist, you're constantly in mum mode, feeding the peeps. I am. Do you know, I feel like Mother Duck. And I tell you why that I feel like that, or what made me realise that's how I felt, is when I do the final drop off, is everyone goes off in their own directions, obviously, going to get the next train or taxi or whatever, or going back to their hotels, and suddenly I'm on my own. It's like I've got empty nest syndrome at the end of every tour. So then I go to Covent Garden and have a champagne and toast myself for a good tour. Well done. So I absolutely can't wait. You may well tell that I'm quite excited. So yeah, less than 5%, but we're like 4.5 weeks out from the first tour of the season. Can't wait. But yes, so end of May though, we'll be doing this Visiting Tudor Britain room. Fulham Palace will be covered in that. So the bishops of London. So which bishop was it? I'm going to forget now. In Mary I's reign. So when you go, there's a Tudor courtyard. So it looks very, Leah, 21 weeks to go. Can I lose 21 kilos? Will there be any of you left if you lost 21 kilos? Where's Leah? I don't know. She lost 21 kilos. We can't find her now. Anyway, so there's a Tudor courtyard. If you have a look on my Instagram, I've done a reel. I was going to do on TikTok. I was just going to say I did it. I didn't in the end. Anyway, if you look on Instagram Reels, there's a reel of the courtyard. Inside, because you've got to imagine, this is a home of the bishops of London. What do people in positions like this like to do? Stamp their mark on the institutions, the homes, whatever they have that they inherit as part of their position. So it has changed a lot inside. Mad Journalist, do you have to schedule the interviews around the tours, or the tours schedule is worked around the dates when the interviews can do it? So tours are set in the diary 12 months before at least. So everything works around the tours. Yeah, absolutely everything works around the tours. They are my core service. It's just that the last 2 years obviously haven't been able to do it. So everything else fits in around. And of course it would be a lot easier for me this year had I not been called for jury service, which I will get on to tell you about in a bit, because it means that I'm not going to be around for the next couple of weeks. So inside the Fulham Palace, it's quite different because it's been changed, updated, bits have been taken down, added on, etc. But in the Great Hall, which does look different to as it would have done in Mary I's reign, is where Protestants, I'm looking over there because the book's over there, but anyway, I'll have to try and remember off the top of my head, where Protestants were supposedly, according to Fox's Book of Martyrs, tortured there by the Bishop of London at the time. So, it's got a lot of Tudor history. You can still physically see some of the Tudor history, and the stories related to Tudor history. Of course, we'll be covering all of those in the live masterclass at the end of May, as well as we're doing 16 locations, and as well as suggested itineraries for people to help plan their trips. Yeah, so not romance Victorians. Yeah, I know, not nice. But then these things did happen, didn't they? Yeah. I also went to Westminster Abbey, which any of you who are interested in coming to London, you may like to know that you can now take photographs inside, which you couldn't before. Yeah, my journalist. Yeah, everything. The big group tours, because they're set in advance, because obviously people book the year before as well. So I will soon be releasing the details of 2023 as well, of which I know there will definitely be an Anne Boleyn tour. Yeah, so Westminster Abbey. Last time I went, which was, I was going to say it's a couple of years ago, it can't be, it must be a little bit longer than that, but you couldn't take photographs. Now, one thing a caveat that I would give to people is just double check when you go, because other places have allowed photographs and then they've revoked that permission. And at the moment, the crowds are probably, I think, so early April, few weeks off Easter, so it's definitely not height of tourist season. So the crowds were probably about half to 2/3 of what they were when I went in the summer. Hiya, Sam, thank you for joining. So it's great for taking photographs, and of course, so the reason I'm saying this is it didn't stop the flow of people going around Westminster Abbey. One of the things I'm wondering is, when it gets very busy again, if people stopping and taking photographs, if they feel like it prevents the flow of visitors. I'm just putting it out there. I wonder if the ability to take photographs will stay. I do hope so. Of course, Westminster Abbey is absolutely full, as you will know. The reason people don't get buried there anymore, there's no space, and also you have monuments as well. You can see the incredible Cosmati pavement, which is the mosaic floor on which the coronation, actual crowning ceremony happens. And at the moment, there are the Jubilee Galleries open. So these galleries were opened actually for the Golden Jubilee. Obviously, we're now in the Platinum Jubilee year. And you can go up, it's a slight extra charge, but you can go up into the galleries. You can't take photographs up there, as I found out. But you can see lots of brilliant things about the building of the Abbey, some of the charters linked to the Abbey when it was an Abbey, not just an Abbey church. Emma says she'd like to visit when she's in London in June. Oh, it's Jubilee weekend. Right. And also Westminster Abbey, of course, is a working church. So yes, romance Victorians, I will get I'll answer your question in a second. So because Westminster Abbey, of course, is a working church, check, especially around the Jubilee time, that it's not closed, because the Queen's there. You're not getting in. Imagine it's guessing that the Jubilee Galleries will be shut after the celebrations have concluded. I don't think so, because they were for the Golden Jubilee. And the exhibition that's in there it's a really, really interesting exhibition. So it has, like I said, these charters. A couple of them are very telling. They're basically forgeries that were created by the monks to sort of say, look, we definitely have been given this land. Look, we have a charter which says so. So they're very old forgeries, and just obviously that story is telling in itself. So there's a 1290 Magna Carta there. There's a Magna Carta there anyway, but the seals as well on these charters are interesting. There's one that remains with the bag that it came in, and you hardly ever see any of these bags. So Joan says, are there effigies in the Jubilee Galleries? Right, so that's the other thing that's really interesting. The effigies, so there's an effigy that you might have seen pictures of William III and Mary II, the joint monarchs. There are some others. There's Elizabeth I's corset from her effigy, and it is tiny. The waist is ridiculously small, probably like a 20-inch waist. Hi, Lisa. Yes, I'm a little bit early today because I have something on at 1 o'clock. So yeah, the effigy of Elizabeth, the corset is just ridiculously small. Now, the one that really got me, then if you joined me for, and the girls for visiting Tudor Britain last week, you'd have heard me talk about this, is Mary I. Thank you, Melinda. Yes, I'll answer that in a moment as well. So it's a wooden effigy. So it's of her for her body, and her tummy, her belly looks 6 months pregnant, 5-6 months pregnant. So when we hear the stories of how she thought she was pregnant, how she had a swollen belly, it's there in her effigy, and it was really quite shocking. So I can see that Jen has answered the question, but I will answer the question for, well, no, so Romance Victorian, she wasn't pregnant, but she thought she was, and she looks it. So yes, thanks for Jenna, but for people watching on YouTube and listening back later, so yes, there are Tudors buried at Westminster Abbey, absolutely. So the Lady Chapel, also known as the Henry VII Chapel, was built by Henry VII, hence why his name is attached to it. But it was a lady chapel. The previous one was demolished, and he had that rebuilt as the Tudor mausoleum, originally going to be at St George's at Windsor, based around the idea that, well, that's where his sort of hero Henry VI wanted to be buried. In fact, that wasn't the case. The monks from Westminster Abbey said, well, actually, Henry VI wanted to be at Westminster Abbey. So he went, right then, and changed his mind and built his Lady Chapel as his family mausoleum at Westminster Abbey. In the that sort of Gothic style, I can't remember the name of the actual architecture, but it's in total contrast to the rest of the Abbey. Actually, very, very ornate. You've got just that fan vaulted ceiling inside. So he is buried there alongside his wife Elizabeth of York. Edward VI is somewhere there. Elizabeth I was buried there by James, by her successor. She is in the same sort of tomb hole as her sister Mary I, and Mary Queen of Scots. So James had his mother Mary moved. She's in a chapel. What do you call them? Chantry. On the opposite side to Elizabeth. He had her move there from Peterborough Cathedral, where she was originally, buried. You also have Margaret Beaufort next to Mary Queen of Scots, and Margaret Douglas as well is there, and Anne of Cleves, who's a little bit more difficult to find, or her stone is a little bit more difficult to find, but she is also there, the only one out of Henry and his wives to be buried at Westminster Abbey. So yeah, Anne of Cleves, or Anna of Cleves, made it there. Imagine it's when you and the ladies were chatting last week, I hadn't realised it was actually carved, and they said, yeah, so they and similar to the fact that she looked pregnant. Yeah, so it was yeah, just like a wooden. So if you were going to make a whoever had carved this effigy of Mary seems to have followed it. Suppose it, I imagine true to life. Otherwise, why would you put the belly on? But yeah, so yeah, Jenna, no wonder there's no more room. I mean, that's just the beginning. Someone asked earlier, I think it was Romance Victorians, about the so the princess in the tower. So some bones in the so that's in the same chantry as Elizabeth I and Mary I, if I'm remembering that right. So their bones are supposed to be in there. They're bones that were found at the Tower of London. So they're not conclusively the princes. These are the bones that some people would like. And Emma, actually, we got talking about this, didn't we, on your private History After Dark room, whether they should be exhumed. Some people want them exhumed to see if they can find out conclusively whether they were the sons of Edward IV or not, the princes in the tower. So Edward V and his younger brother. So let me just see if I've missed some comments here. Yes, Emma says, I love the symbolism of Elizabeth and Mary being counterparts and opposite each other. Of course, interestingly, the closest they came ever. You know, they never met in life, so far as we know, and they are that close in death. Jenna says Mary must have been swollen from the tumour at the time of her death. Yes, exactly. So, and that's why it was added to her effigy. So they must have just faithfully recreated. So we used to look at some of the portraiture and going, oh yes, but we know they Instagram filtered that. Evidently not in the effigies. I mean, Elizabeth's effigy, and I can say this as a fellow older lady, is really jowly. And actually, when I went to the Elizabeth and Mary exhibition at the British Library, and you could get up close to a recreation of the effigy that's on the tomb at Westminster Abbey, you can see that, because you can get above the effigy, and when you look face onto it, she's really jowly. And like I said, I can say this because mine are forming quite nicely. Oh, Lisa says, I feel sorry for Mary. She went through such a lot of strife because of Henry. She really did. And you've bought the Anna of Cleves book by Heather. It is detailed and it is a great read. I'm so glad you're enjoying it. Romance Victorians, I heard about the ghost of the tower. I think it is a made-up story to make people scared. Well, of course, everyone loves a ghost story. Everyone loves a ghost story, especially people who guide. And especially if you're a Victorian guide. However, what I would say about the Tower of London is I know at least three who've worked there, spent long amounts of time there, have been going about. So they're there going about their daily work, or actually two people. One was stationed there, one actually lives there. So what I'm saying is they're not heightened to this idea that there could be ghosts around, and they've all had experiences. So, and one particular lady, physical experiences of having her hair tugged in the White Tower at the Tower of London. So who knows? I don't seem to be like it. You know, some people are channeled into that kind of thing. Nothing happens. Mad journalist, no offense, but what a bunch of jokers. They made the ladies true to form, but yet they always make Henry like a decade earlier. Well, a lot of the portraits of Henry are not nice. They're not flattering, should I say. There's some great ones. They're elsewhere, so you won't see them in sort of the National Portrait Gallery, but the Victoria and Albert Museum has got one, and his features are tiny. Like, he's really like got a sort of tiny face, and you know, he's portrayed big. So no, not all likenesses made of Henry were flattering by any stretch. Elizabeth, though, she controlled her image just as much as her father did. But yeah, the effigies are interesting. But of course, Henry never had an effigy. Well, no, he would have had an effigy. Sorry, he did have an effigy. It doesn't survive, so we don't know what it looked like. But yeah, Lisa says Henry's face always seems to look square, very unflattering. Yeah, he was sort of a big, I imagine, big guy, like his grandfather Edward IV as well. Big stocky guy, square jaws, strong features, or strong jawline. Anyway, so yeah, so Westminster Abbey, great to go to. What else can I tell you about Westminster Abbey? So we've got Poets' Corner. So a lot of people commemorated there. And the Tomb of the Unknown Warrior, who any of you don't know about that, I've done a video on that. How actually it might have been in Patreon, I'm not sure if it's on YouTube, but about how they chose the Unknown Warrior. Daddy Pig loves to dig. Hi, how are you? Are there any factual, unbiased texts that describe his features? Quite possibly. I don't know. I imagine in something like dispatches from ambassadors, where they don't have to be, but one, where they don't think it's going to be read to Henry, and two, where they don't have to be biased, Also, yeah, I suppose it's subjective. Describing someone's features is subjective. But what I'm saying is that a lot of his portraits aren't. I've seen quite a few that are not at all, flattering. So yeah, Chewing Gums. Hi, how are you? Really enjoyed your last video uploads. They're really interesting. Thank you. So I've had two recently. They're both with Gareth Russell. One is on the Titanic, so check that out if you're interested. We're actually, I erroneously said on the History After Dark room last night that it was today that the Titanic sank. It wasn't. Sorry, the 14th of April is very, very late on, is the date where the Titanic hit the iceberg. And it's that so she actually sank overnight into the 15th of April. And he talks in that interview about how people just still did not believe that it was going to sink. They just did not think it was going to sink. And this is a major reason why the lifeboats weren't filled. In fact, he busts quite a few myths about the Titanic. Things like the third class passengers were kept under what do you call it, on a boat deck, and that's not true. That somehow Captain Smith was doing something that other captains wouldn't do, i.e. carry on at full speed towards an ice field. So there's lots in there. Have a look. Emma says she's just finished listening to the Titanic podcast and loved it. Thank you. I'm really, really proud of it. I love that interview with Gareth. The other one I've done with him, it just happens that that I planned it. I suppose I planned it quite badly, but the other interview that I've got that went live last night, should have been today, but I was too impatient, is about the downfalls of Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, and looking at the differences and the similarities between both of their downfalls. And it's really telling. And there's also other things that just came out. If any of you've looked at my Instagram story, that Henry had written a play. He wrote a play, and the play was performed before Anne was even executed, about her crimes. In fact, I think before she was actually convicted of these crimes. So fascinating interview. So check that out. All the interviews are also available on the podcast as well. So depending on how you like to absorb your information, you can watch it or you can listen to it. Sam, could I recommend a documentarian? David Starkey and Lucy Worsley's. Oh, you watched David Starkey and Lucy Worsley on YouTube? Yeah. Depends on which period you like. I also quite like Dan Jones. Anyone else like Dan Jones? He's very straightforward. He sort of goes further back into the Plantagenet history and further back than that. So if you're looking at things like the Knights Templar he's written a book on, so there's probably stuff out there from him on that. But yeah, so have a look at Titanic. Have a look at loves Dan. Loves Dan. He's great, isn't he? He's all right. He's yeah, like I say, straightforward. I like people who are straightforward. Lisa, well, Dr. Cat, yes, Dr. Cat. So if you look at Reading the Past on YouTube, she does a lot of Tudor history based videos as well. And you can have a look at some of mine. I've got quite a few if you want. That would be good as well. Mad Genesis, I knew of it, but I put it down as just rumours. I was not able to locate or read any copies of the play. So when I mentioned it, it was like, yes, because you were the only one, a mad journalist, who said, yes, I've heard of that. Everyone else is like, no way. The play doesn't survive. The account is basically in, I don't know where the account's written down, but the account is of it being performed. So that's why we know it existed. But as Gareth said, how did he have time? Yeah. This is one of the things that was different. He was obviously shocked by the allegations against Catherine Howard, and yet supposedly Anne and the accusations put across onto Anne were way worse than what for Catherine Howard. And yet he's taking everything that happens with Anne in his stride, but not with Catherine. And there's so many examples like that are really telling. Jenna, I think you'll love it. Yes, I have to go and listen to that. Yes, please do. There's also a chance to win a copy of Young and Damned and Fair, signed copy by Gareth as well, if you watch it on YouTube and answer the question below in the comments. So yes, do that as well. This is the last time there will be a chance of winning something on the YouTube. All my giveaways from now on will only be in Patreon. Janice, an early form of propaganda against Anne by Henry. Absolutely. It was a look, she's guilty. I have no choice. I have to get rid of her. She's so guilty of these heinous crimes. And SF King Cooler, I could write a play about my ex, tragedy or comedy, not sure. Jenna, it honestly doesn't surprise me that he would do something like that. I just don't. Has anyone ever written a play or tried to write something? I mean, it's not a short task, is it? I bet it was crap. It's crap. Mad Journalist, the Howard girl was incredibly young and beautiful, so his ego must have taken a much bigger hit. Well, yes, I think his ego did take a big hit. It's a bit of I imagine, wake-up call for him. Oh, I'm not the young, attractive, athletic king man that I was, and someone genuinely doesn't fancy me and does fancy someone else enough that they're going to do something about it potentially. Yeah, so if you're interested in Tudor history, so Sam especially, have a look at the interview with Gareth that's on my YouTube channel after this. It's a really good place if you're interested in Tudor history. But there's other documentaries on there as well. There's one with Tracy Borman, there's one with Heather Darcy, there's one with Antonia Keeney. There's quite a few on there now. Matt Lewis as well. So have a little look through. So we talked about London. I've talked about the interviews that are out. So make sure you have. Yes, like I say, this is the last time you'll be able to win something just off a YouTube video. All the giveaways from now on will be within my Patreon, and that starts today. Actually, anyone who's a paid-up member of Patreon will be entered into a draw, which I'll draw tomorrow, because everyone who's a paid-up member by the end of today, to win a year's digital subscription to the new Tudor Places magazine, which is quite exciting. Anyone who is a patron will also have an ongoing 15% discount from off the magazine. And if you're on my email list, there's an early bird 10% discount code on my email list. So make sure you're signed up for that as well. You can do that by clicking the link in my bio. So we have two other history anniversaries that I was going to talk about today. We're 40 minutes in already. I hope I'm doing a good job of waking you up or helping you enjoy your lunch or winding down for the day, wherever you are. So there's two anniversaries I was going to talk briefly about today. The death of the Earl of Bothwell. So this is Mary, Queen of Scots' third husband. He died in a dungeon in a Danish castle. And the Battle of Barnet as well. This is the one that preceded the Battle of Tewkesbury. It's sort of considered one of the most decisive battle of the Wars of the Roses between York and Lancaster, I suppose, until we get Bosworth, and then but this section of them, and it's where Warwick, the Kingmaker, so the Earl of Warwick, Richard Neville, dies. So we'll talk about that, and then maybe at some point I'll let you go and enjoy your day. So let's start with Bothwell, shall we? So Bothwell, he dies on the 14th of April, 1578. The Earl of Bothwell was Mary, Queen of Scots' third husband. He was the fourth Earl of Bothwell, and he was implicated. Well, he was widely believed to be behind the murder of Mary's second husband, Henry Stuart Lord Darnley, father to the future James the Sixth of Scotland. So people saw this as regicide. Whoever had killed Darnley had killed a king. So that's a crime that deserves death. Now Bothwell had been put on trial, but he had been acquitted. But people didn't believe that he wasn't responsible. Mary married him, and it's possible that was under duress. There are accounts that believe that he raped her. She certainly did get pregnant by him, and but it just caused massive fractions at the Scottish court, and Mary and Bothwell faced the troops of the Scottish nobles and lords at a place called Carberry Hill. And when was that? June. I haven't written down when that is. Have a look for me. And it never got into a battle, but Bothwell escaped. He left, and Mary surrendered. So there's no bloodshed. But Bothwell, he went back. I think it was to Stirling and set sail to the continent. The idea being that he was going to raise a force from the continent to support getting Mary back onto the throne. However, through some weird twist of fate and some really bad weather, he ends up landing at Norway. Genesis, I'm not sure I'd place Darnley in the king category. Well, you don't have to be, as we well know, you don't have to be a good person to be a king or queen. You just have to be in the right place, right time, and probably born in the right place, in the right time. Anyway, so Bothwell ends up in Norway. Happens, we won't go into this now, but he happens to, I'm going to say, bump into his first wife, whom he'd abandoned, taking her dowry. So she's not very pleased. Now he has obviously he's got there by ship, and he gives her the ship by way of compensation, get off my back sort of thing. But he's been sort of held captive at this time while this is sorted out, because she's sued him for abandonment and for taking her dowry. Now he thinks he's going to go to Frederick II of Denmark and get his support and raise this army to go back to Scotland and get Mary, and of course himself then, back into power. However, Frederick is hearing that the Scots are after him and the English are after him. And he's thinking, could be some money in this, might be a nice ransom payment. And so he has him held captive. He's taken somewhere first, can't remember, and then he's transferred to, or basically his value as a prisoner just vanishes as Mary's fortunes or chances of getting back onto the Scottish throne diminish too, because of course Mary is taken after Carberry Hill to Lochleven. Disali in Antarctica. Are you kidding? Wow. Well, you are the furthest afield from, and we have Australia online as well. That's amazing. Hi, welcome. So Bothwell is so Mary's fortunes are basically in the gutter. She goes to she's taken prisoner. She's taken to Lochleven Castle, which is in the middle of a loch. And she actually miscarries. This is how we know she's definitely slept with Bothwell. She's miscarries. For it to be known to be twins, she has to have been a little bit further gone than she claims. However, she miscarries, and she's forced to abdicate. The physical, just what would you call it? What she's gone through. To miscarry twins on her own in a drafty castle, incredible. She's forced to abdicate. And no, I'm not Australian, I'm English, Gisali, but we have people from Australia on watching. So I'm definitely up in the Northern Hemisphere in England. So so Mary's and she flees from Lochleven. She manages to escape and comes to England thinking that she'll get support. If you think about it, Mary was going to be Queen of France. She is a legitimate Scottish queen, and she's related to the Queen of England, and she's descended from the same grandfather, great-grandfather. So she comes to England thinking she's going to get support, and she doesn't. She goes from being kept an eye on, to just being openly known that she's a prisoner. In fact, she turns up to Tutbury Castle. That's where she first finds out that she's now considered a prisoner. So her fortunes just dissipate. So of course Bothwell, stuck over there in Denmark as a prisoner, is worth nothing to Frederick II. He's finally taken to Dragsholm Castle and kept in the dungeon cellar there. And the story goes that he is chained to a pillar, and the chain is fairly short, so he can only move within a very small amount of space around this pillar. And that as he's done that, I think he was there for about, some accounts say 10 years, but that doesn't tally in with when he's supposed to have been moved there. It's more like 5 years, which is plenty to be chained to a pillar. And he's created a groove in the floor by walking around and around and around this pillar. So he's isolated. He's not being kept in good conditions, like, at all. That's even a stupid thing to say. And he turns mad. He's 44 when he dies at Dragsholm Castle, which is now a hotel. So you can go and stay there. And supposedly another haunted place. If you are connected into that kind of energy, maybe you enjoy that kind of thing, you could go. But yeah, so his fall from grace was hard. It was hard. Oh, well, yeah, welcome. Everyone who watches is very, very welcome. Chewing gums. What do the businessmen say about Antarctica? It's really hard to make money in that climate. Lisa, perhaps he deserved it for his treatment of Mary. I know lots of people feel that way, that he sort of got what he deserved, but it was such a horrendous end. You're talking about a man who was kept in practically solitary confinement for doing pretty much what everyone else did at that time. That's not saying whether it's right or wrong, but, you know, vying for power. And he was married to Mary, who was made to abdicate. And I mean, she was forcibly made to abdicate, that is being forced, after she just miscarried. So, you know, what about those people? What about those people who did that to her, to put her baby, James, on the throne? Why'd you put a baby on the throne? Oh, because you can then take power as the regent. So nobody smells of roses in this story at all. So yeah, it's an interesting story. And the other one I was going to cover today is the Battle of Barnet. Now this. So we talked about the Battle of Tewkesbury. Any of you saw a few weeks ago, I was live from Tewkesbury. I did the battle walk, the battle trail walk around Tewkesbury, where you can walk through the field where the encampment of Henry VI's troops were. He wasn't there; he was stuck in the tower, and the major battlefields, battle points. It's really interesting. Anyway, you can. So I was there a couple of weeks ago. Now, the Battle of Tewkesbury followed hot on the heels of the Battle of Barnet. We'd had this weird period. In fact, if you're on YouTube, I'm going to try something here where I can. Oh, look! I've brought up a slide on YouTube. Anyone on Instagram, you're going to have to imagine now. There's a slide on YouTube. Anyone who's listening on the podcast, and basically it's a timeline. So I've come up with this timeline to show, because we get Henry VI, then we get Edward, then we go back to Henry, then we get Edward. All right. So Henry VI comes to the throne in September 1422. Now, Henry VI is not really fit to rule. And so this causes, you know, huge tensions, huge factions, and you've got Richard, Duke of York, who takes up the cause, if you like, to really try and put himself to rule, because Henry VI can't do it, and he tries a period as regent, and anyway, so it never works well. But so Richard Duke of York actually dies in battle, but Warwick the Kingmaker is Lisa says, wasn't he named Henry the Sick? Henry the Sick. Well, I mean, he was, and you can't expect that somebody who can't rule to be the ruler of an autocracy, which is what a monarchy is. Mono means one. It's one person in charge. So, of course, when you this is why children on the throne is such a problem at this time. It's difficult, but so I've got this timeline up. So we then get Edward IV comes to the throne just after I think his father died 2 months earlier, so we could have had a Richard, but they win. Was that Towton? It was Towton, wasn't it? And so Edward IV becomes king on March 1461. Now, Warwick the Kingmaker, Richard Neville, had been pivotal in that battle. He's very rich. He's got the resources, and he supports Edward at this point. Now, Edward is young. He's 18 when he comes to the throne, when they win at the Battle of Towton, and he is not as malleable, it turns out, as Warwick the Kingmaker was hoping. And you get this massive vying for power. By the time we get to the Battle of Barnet, Warwick the Kingmaker has switched sides. He's on Henry VI's side now. Edward IV had been exiled over, in hiding over on the continent. Anyway, really just long enough to sort of come up with a plan, and he comes back and they meet at Barnet. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about this, one, it's because it's for today, but two, I'm going to show you on YouTube. So you had, it was just basically a massive weird twist of fate and the weather, right? The outcome of Battle of Barnet. And it just descended to chaos. But let me start off by saying, so you had like 3 battalions. What do you call them? I should get up on my battle lingo. And so you had Warwick's forces set up under 3 commanders, and alongside them, should have been pretty much opposite, you had Edward IV's troops, so the Yorkist side. It's very foggy. They've got there anyway. They've set up slightly offset. When the battle commences the next morning, one of the York battalions they basically end up managing to come round, and it's a rout, and they push them down into Barnet, because actually the battle happens just north of Barnet, and there's a battalion. I don't know if I'm using the right word actually, but headed by the Earl of Hastings, that they're pushed into Barnet by the Earl of Oxford's troops. They dissipate, they run, they go, and Oxford's troops decide to have a little bit of a pillage of Barnet while they're there. Oxford manages to get them back together. He's like, no, the battle is not over, and gets them back to the battlefield. However, it's so foggy that as they return to the battlefield, their standard is mistaken for that of York, and their own troops, so the other troops of Warwick's army, turn on them. So you have Warwick's troops fighting each other. So it's absolute chaos. You've got shouts of treason going up, and in that foray, people just disappear. I'm off. I'm out of here. And Warwick is found by some of the York troops, and he's killed on the battlefield. So without Warwick, really Henry VI's chances are over. Now we get the Battle of Tewkesbury less than 2 weeks later, where Henry VI's wife and son lead troops to try and win. But the Yorkist brothers are, Tewkesbury happens hot on the heels of their victory at Barnet. They've killed Warwick the Kingmaker, the traitor to their cause, and they catch up with Margaret of Anjou's troops at Tewkesbury. This was not where Margaret of Anjou was planning to have battle. Anyway, that's a different topic, and you can have a look at my videos about the Battle of Barnet and the Battle of Tewkesbury. Jenna, not treason, just friendly fire. Yeah, friendly fire. Who came up with that term? Jeez Louise. Yeah, but yeah. So isn't that just that twist of fate? The weather. Interestingly, it was foggy when I woke up here today. If you find that interesting. But you can have fog, definitely have fog in mid-April here, most definitely. So yeah, not a straightforward battle. An interesting turn of events, which turned out to be conclusive. And of course, Edward IV reigned until he died then of a natural death. And then of course it was his sons we were talking about before. Edward V and his younger brother Richard, who were the princes in the Tower. So there you go, Battle of Barnet. So you can see a video that I've done. It's only short. It was a part of my This Week in British History snippets that I was doing last year. So you can check that out, easy peasy. Now, the next 2 weeks, I will be on jury service, so I won't be here. I may well do ad hoc videos, but I've got no idea whether I'm going to be full on a case or whether I'm going to be sitting in the waiting room for 2 weeks. I've got no idea. So you may or may not see me for the next 2 weeks. So I will be back on the 5th of May. But as any of you who were here earlier will know, I'm going to be I run tours, and my first tour for this year is running in May. I've got a couple of days private tour before that, which is going to be very fun. So I'm probably going to be a little bit ad hoc during May, but I'll be back doing Thursday Tea Time Live on the 5th of May anyway. And then after that, it might go a little bit skewer for a while, a little bit ad hoc. But in the meantime, check out the interviews with Gareth Russell on Titanic, which of course the anniversary of the of it actually sinking is tomorrow, but it sort of happens overnight, 14th to the 15th of April. Have a look at that interview. It's just the way he talks. It's very, very, very informative, passionate, really, but incredibly interesting because it is a proper mythbuster. Chewing gum's friendly fire, I think, was first coined in the was first used by the US military, but I might be wrong. Janice, good luck with the jury service. Thank you. I'm hoping to not get anything too harrowing. I can be a little bit sensitive. Depends what I'm talking about or who it is, but yeah. Oh, I didn't do our just for fun question. Let me do that because this is going to be the last one for a few weeks. So the question last week was, who does Gareth Russell think he should have been harder on in his book about the Titanic? Does anybody know? If anyone's watched the interview, they will know. So this is Gareth's book about the Titanic. It's called The Ship of Dreams. It does look slightly different on the American version. This is a different cover. It's called The Ship of Dreams, The Sinking of the Titanic and the End of the Edwardian Era. In this book, accounts of passengers from third class, second class, first class, and the crew. Thank you, Daddy Piglets to dig. Yes. But in interview, he mentions, I wish I had been harder on someone. Do any of you know, or you could take a guess actually, who might Gareth have wanted to, or thinks he should have been harder on in his book about the Titanic? I will give you a few minutes while I tell you. Janice says, yes, Janice has got it. Anyone on YouTube want to give it a guess? Who does Gareth think he should have been harsher on in his book about the Titanic? And he talks about this in the interview. So if you want to know as well, after you find out the answer, why he thinks he should have been harsher on him, then listen to the interview. The other interview as well with him about Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, definitely please go and listen to that as well. Okay, it was Captain Smith. Janice and Emma have got it. He thinks he should have been harsher on Captain Smith. One of the things he talks about is the idea that he didn't slow down, that Captain Smith didn't slow down, and that was just ridiculous. However, he also goes on to talk about why. Yeah, my Janice, you've got it. Janice says, I can't remember why. You'll have to look at the interview again. I can't, but he believe it or not, the received wisdom at the time was to plough through an ice field. So yeah, and actually, Daddy Piglipstig says for going too fast. Actually, that's not why he thinks he should have been harsher on him, because the received wisdom, it was to plough through an ice field. I shouldn't tell you because I want you to go and look at the interview, but there's loads more in there than just this. But no, it was more that he didn't instill any feeling of urgency. He didn't inform the crew that yes, actually, this was a fatal this was fatal damage to the ship, and they were going to have to evacuate. And because he didn't instill that in the crew, including the hospitality crew, there was no sense of urgency on the boat to get off. And Gareth talks about this. The concert's still going on, the food's still being served. People knew there was stuff going on. They were up in the middle of the night because there was something going on. He just didn't give that urgency. So they didn't instill that urgency on the passengers. And you had some people getting into lifeboats, but they weren't full because people couldn't be persuaded to get into them. They didn't see the need. Have a look at the interview. It's brilliant. I've really, really enjoyed talking to Gareth about it and just listening to him talk about it. It's incredibly insightful. Yes, Janice said, yeah, no one knew it was significant. Indeed. Captain Smith obviously did know. That just didn't. He could have been in a state of shock. Either way, that sense of urgency wasn't translated to the crew and to the passengers. Jenna, they all screwed up tremendously indeed. He also talks about the moon that night, the stillness of the water. Check it out, you'll really enjoy it. Right, everybody, have a Lisa, no, I don't have a question for the next 2 weeks because I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be. Well, I'm definitely going to be back on the 5th, but it might be my only one in May, so let's I'm going to leave it for now. So there isn't just a fun question this week, I'm afraid. But if you go and check out Gareth's interview about Anne and Catherine, so Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, there is a chance to win his book. So I'll give you that to do. You can win a signed copy of Young and Damned and Fair, which is the biography by him of Catherine Howard, which is the biography you need to read if you're interested in Catherine Howard. Thank you, everyone. Wishing me luck for jury service. I will be back on the 5th of May. And so everyone have a lovely Easter, wherever you are in the world. Whether you celebrate it or not, I hope you get some chocolate eggs. That's what Easter's all about, isn't it? So have a fabulous weekend, everybody. I will see you in a few weeks' time. So take care. And yeah, have a great one. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.